Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our next esteemed speaker, Madam Charlotte Akwaije, a dedicated environmentalist who has made significant contributions to the field of water, sanitation, hygiene in Ghana. Currently serving as a program manager for the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, as well as the capacity building coordinator for the Gama Sanitation and Water Project. Madam Charlotte brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our gathering today. She holds a Master of Philosophy in Environmental Science from the University of Ghana, a Master of Business Administration from Wrexham University in the United Kingdom, and a Bachelor of Science in Environment and Natural Resource Management from Presbyterian University College of Ghana. Her educational background reflects her commitment to understanding and addressing the complex environmental challenges facing our world. Over the past 2 decades, she has actively contributed to Ghana's water and sanitation sector, working at local and regional and national levels. She has been involved in the implementation of development projects funded by prestigious institutions such as the World Bank, African Development Bank, and European Union. Driven by her passion for strengthening institutions and building the capacity of WASH sector professionals, she has dedicated her efforts to provide essential WASH services to disadvantaged groups. Her advocacy works focus on policy changes that benefit women, children, and individuals with disabilities, ensuring equitable access to clean water, provide sanitation, and enhancing hygiene practices. With her extensive experience, unwavering dedication, and expertise in the field, she's a true champion for environmental sustainability and social equity. Please join me in warmly welcoming Madam Charlotte as she shares her insights and experiences with us today. Welcome, Madam. The floor is
yours. Thank you very much, Mamiada. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hope you had a nice weekend and waking you up early this morning. Our week is starting very early. I am very happy and I'm very happy and very humbled by your introduction, and I'm excited to join Construmat's seminar sessions this morning. And today we are going to discuss our country in sanitation and then water. So we have currently developed the Ghana Sector Development Program, which is a costed strategy for 2021 up to 2030. And the focus is the national planning indicators, our golden indicators, and of course, the sustainable development goals. So if you look at the timelines, we are looking at the in-country plans and then also the global plans. We all appreciate that water, sanitation, and hygiene is a critical component in development. In fact, it's the Sustainable Development Goal 6, but it underpins 12 of the SDGs. So if you are able to make any significant achievements in the WASH sector, of course, it will affect the other 12 goals. We are looking at health, education, industry, community development, and all that. But this same sector faces a lot of investment gaps, especially now with the emerging global economic crisis. Because over the past years, most of the funding or investment to the WASH sector is either donor-driven, philanthropist, and all that, and a component from government. Yet, as climate change also intensifies, the WASH sector will continue to be one of the sectors that will be most vulnerable. Of course, we'll be having the flooding issues, water scarcity, and all that. So all these global challenges and the local challenges affect the sector that has little investment. So we have the Ghana Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Sector Development Program for us to be able to have some inclusive framework for sector planning, implementation of our programs and projects. We'll be able to do a very good monitoring of our system, do evaluation, and then reports for sustainable and universal water supply, sanitation, and hygiene services in the country. So what is the purpose of GWASHDP? We have several agencies and we have several development partners, civil society groups, private sector, and everybody is in their own space doing one or two interventions for us to be able to provide improved sanitation and then safe water for the citizens of Ghana. But you see that they are in a different spheres or different program, different approaches. So you consolidate the results and you see that there are some duplications here and there, yet the resources are limited and we want to be able to efficiently manage the limited resources we have. So this document is a framework that will coordinate the implementation of all these activities to deliver our vision, our policy objectives, both local and global goals and targets that is set for the WASH sector. And again, the sector will be guided. So both governments, the private sector, our development partners, and all our stakeholders will be guided in their planning, their development, and the management of the national water resources, and the delivery and management of the WASH services sustainably. So that is the purpose of the GWASHDP. We have 5 specific objectives. There are a lot of goals and visions and aspirations in the document, but we have 5 specific objectives that we want to focus on as a country. And the first one is to ensure that efforts to deliver WASH services are well coordinated to achieve the national, the regional, and the global goals. We are looking at the SDGs, we are looking at the golden indicators. So we want it to be coordinated appropriately for us to be able to do that. And there are a lot of sector challenges that we face, but we have also outlined some key of the sector challenges that limit us to be able to serve the people of Ghana when it comes to WASH. So if you're able to identify these gaps, and we'll be able to plan strategically to strengthen our institutions to be able to address the challenges that face the sector. And of course, the power of partnership. So we want to encourage the wider stakeholder in participating in all this, right from planning or designing of programs to the evaluation process of the service delivery. And then the 4th one is to prioritize our neglected components, paying more attention to WASH services that bring positive and sustainable behavior changes in the water use, sanitation, hygiene practices. Somebody told me that our biggest problem is behavior change in this country. So we want to prioritize those components that are also neglected. And of course, ensure accountability and transparency through the monitoring systems and then the evaluating the reporting systems of the WASH sector, the sector information system, as we call it, SIS for the WASH. So how will stakeholders be able to use this document? Generally, to be like a guide, I call it the WASH Bible. And this, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, luckily for us now, we have the Sanitation Directorate and the Water Directorate all under one ministry. Before the establishment of the Ministry of Sanitation, the Sanitation Directorate used to be with the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and then the water was with Western Housing. But now it's joined together to form the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. So we have the agencies like the Water Resource Commission, Ghana Water Company Limited, Community Water and Sanitation. They are agencies under the ministry. And these are the agencies that have mandates to provide services, both in rural water and then urban water. And then we have the MMDs, who does implementation on the environmental sanitation services. Then we have our development partner, private sector, NGOs, or complementing these rules. So these are the agencies or organizations that plan, develop programs and projects in the WASH sector. So these are the people that the documents will benefit them. And we are also looking at revenue mobilization. If we move into the gaps, we realize that investment is one of the biggest gaps when it comes to WASH sector. So what are some of the innovative ideas we can pull together or financial tools to bring in more investment into the sector? And of course, to enhance the sector coordination, there are institutional arrangement provision in the document as to how the sector should be coordinated. And then a guide in preparing WASH projects. So I think Construment does a lot of WASH projects, and this document can guide you when you are preparing your WASH projects. So in summary with the document, we want to have a one national WASH program that is well coordinated towards our sector goals and is coordinated efforts by all stakeholders. So this one is like all hands on deck to fix the puzzle and to achieve the targets. And of course, also to improve the sector leadership, harmonization, alignment, transparency and accountability, effectiveness and then efficiency of the sector, and provide a strong link with the national planning process. As the National Development Planning Commission, the NDPC, they take all sector medium-term development plans, and we want this to have a strong link and then align properly with the national development plans. So let's zoom into the document itself. The document is structured in a different, several components, or let me call it thematic areas: urban sanitation, rural sanitation, urban water, rural water, and then we have cross-cutting issues like climate change issues and all that. So we'll take them in the chapters. I will share the book in the link. You can grab the book and then look at it. But I'll pick some of the thematic areas for us to look at the challenges and then what the sector can do about it and the role that you can also play for us to achieve it. So chapter 1 basically look at the purpose of the GWASH, the guiding principles and all that. And then we have chapter 2 looking at the current WASH situation as a country. Where are we? What are the policy, legal and regulatory frameworks available, the institutional arrangements? How is the sector being coordinated? The current WASH coverage and summary of key sector challenges. In chapter 3, we are looking at the sector vision and the goals, and then the annual review that's plan the set targets for the sector every year. So if we look at evolution of WASH and then sector strategies, from 2000 up to 2022, I must say that Ghana, we are very good in developing documents. So we have several policies and strategies for both water and then sanitation. We have a lot of plans, guidelines, and all that. Somebody did a study and said we have more than 200 documents developed for the WASH sector. But when it comes to implementation, that is where the gap is. So we have the National Water Policy, and then we have the Environmental Sanitation Policy. We have 2010, it's not 2000, and we have the 2010 now, which is under revision. And then the Water Policy 2 is also under revision. I think it's already at cabinet for approval. And then we also have the water sector, water and sanitation sector development plans, which is aligned with the national development plans. And then we have the NESAP. So the NESAP is the National Environmental Sanitation Strategic Action Plan, where the municipal and the district assemblies also develop their sanitation plans from, and they call it NESAP. Then we have the CESIP, that's the Environmental Sanitation Investment Plan. And if you look at the global goals, we are looking at the MDGs 2000 and 2015. Well, we're not able to achieve most of the targets for the MDGs. And here we have the SDGs also to achieve. And if you look at the pace that we are going now for water, we can't be sure that we'll be able to achieve the SDG. But if you look at the sanitation coverage, we'll go there. You see that it's very low, and we need to have a drastic interventions for us to be able to achieve the SDG. So like I mentioned, 2022, we started the revision of the National Water Policy, and the Environmental Sanitation Policy also started this year under review. So this GWASH is a guiding document for us to be able to integrate all the current issues into our policies to address the current developmental agenda. And when we look at the laws that governs water, sanitation, and hygiene, we have several of them. So I will pick the Public Health Act, which is looking at improve public health of the citizens. So you have most of the laws concerning especially sanitation and then local governance. We have the Local Government Act, the EP Act for environmental sustainability, our standards and all that, the Water Resource Commission Act, GWASDP, Ghana Water Act. We have all these laws that support us. And like I mentioned, we have the Ghana Water Company serving the water components, and then we have community water and sanitation also serving the rural sanitation. And the strategic plans, we have a lot of them. Now we have a lot of guidelines by the Water and Sanitation Sector Development Plan 2012 and the National Environmental Sanitation Strategic Action Plan 2010 is what is a baseline document for the development of the GWASHDP. And of course, we do the medium-term development plan 3 years with the National Development Planning Commission. But when it comes to the rural sanitation, we have the Rural Sanitation Model Strategy, we call it RSMS. That is where we have all our rural sanitation interventions, the CLTS and all that in that document. And of course, we have our NCWSS also for the rural water sector. If you look at the stakeholders or the rules, so for water, we have the rural and urban, we have our customers that we have to supply. And of course, the sanitation also, both rural and urban. And our service provider, we have the MMDAs, the private sector, Ghana Water Companies, GWASs, some NGOs providing water supply to the various homes, both rural and urban. And then sanitation, we have private sector and some NGOs. NGOs mostly in the recovery space, recycling and all that, bringing in innovations and technologies into the sanitation space. So you realize that we do not have any agency for the sanitation sector, yet the ministry decided to come up with a sanitation authority, which will be an agency for the sanitation sector, and it's still in process for that. And when we come to our regulations, so for water, we know we have our SIGA, the government, the state interest government authority, the PURC, GSA, FDA, and then Water Resource Commission for our water resource management. And then the policies, like I mentioned, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Water Resources, Sanitation and Water Resources, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Health, and NDPC is the mandatory planning organization for all these ministries. So we'll look at some of the key sector challenges that this document has outlined. We have several challenges in the sector, but we consider weak sector planning and coordination as a big issue because there's a lot of duplications, who accounts to who and who does what where and all that. And also looking at inequitable resource allocation. If we move into the funding space, realize that the money that we need or the investment that we need and what we receive is really inequitable for us to achieve the targets. And then weak monitoring information systems, the MIS for WASH is very weak. So the sector is now trying to improve the sector information system for everybody to feed in their data for us to get to know exactly what everyone is doing. And of course, with the integrated water resource management, there's a lack of integrated planning. And then wash planning process at the local level is also not linked to their reality. If you go to MMDs, the 260 MMD, 200, everybody is doing something different with little results. And also, some of the challenges, the low priority given to the system strengthens the institutions that are mandatory for these services. And of course, the affordability. Our policy is a polluter pay principle that we are using in Ghana, and some people or the poor cannot be rich. Sustainability of our wash facilities, especially in schools, capacity gaps in the wash institutions, government budgetary allocation is not enough for the sector, and of course, limited financing for investments and renewable assets and hampering expansion and sustainability of our services are some of the sector challenges that we faced. So we have come up with planning scenarios, and let's look at this. We have 3 scenarios. We have the full funding. The green one is the full funding, where we get all the money that we need and provide safely managed water supply and sanitation coverage by 2030. The scenario 2 is having medium funding. So you don't get all that you need, but at least you get something in between the minimum and then the maximum. And depending on which scenario that we pick to use as a country, then it will also determine your coverage, your reach. For how much you put there is how much impact that you have. So if you're able to do medium funding, we'll be able to at least have some 84% coverage or 97% coverage for water, and then sanitation 62%. That's if you're able to do the medium funding. But if you do minimum funding, the red, as we are doing for the past 10 years on the slow pace, then for water, well, we'll be able to do better, but for sanitation, 36% by 2030. It means we are not even nowhere near the SDG targets. So let's keep these scenarios in mind. We'll apply it somewhere in the presentation. So if you look at the targets, as it is now, the scenarios for basic supply of water, and then water coverage, and then sanitation. Depending on which model of the scenario that you are investing in, if you are investing full funding, you'll be able to say, oh, I will achieve 100%, or even if not 100%, you'll be able to get between 85 and 100. But if you do not, then the current status that we have will be just a little addition or just a little percentage that will be added to it. The chapter 4, so we'll move into the various thematic areas, the water resource management, water supply, sanitation, and then hygiene, these 3 components. And then we'll see how the costing also applies to these thematic areas. So if you look at the water resource management indicators and targets, as a country, even our capacity to manage the water resource is very low, especially in the regions where Galamsey and all these things are happening. We don't have even human resource there to be able to do proper planning and all that. And if you look at the buffer zones, we have to have a very good task force to be able to do all that. So depending on how much investment we do, so you see that we have the medium, the minimum, the medium, and the full. So if any of the investments that we do now between 2021, or let's say 2023 now to 2030, how much we invest into this sector or this thematic area will determine the results that we are going to have. So if we are lucky enough to be able to invest full, then of course we'll have our basin management achieve 100%. But if we are not, then it means that we are going to have 80%. So that is how the scenarios play out with the water resource management. The document has also made provisions for the priority actions that we can do for us to be able to achieve the scenarios that we just look at. Strengthen our catchment management, capacity needs assessment, clear rules, and all that. I won't bore you with this one. You can look at them in the document. Let's look at urban water supply indicators and targets. So for water, urban water, even our current state, we are not doing that bad. But if you look at the household connections, that is where, so even though you have the water coverage high, but access to water at the various households is the target. And of course, the non-revenue water issues also is also a very worrying situation. When you have your baseline 47% non-revenue water, you have to do a lot to be able to bring it down to 35% if you are able to do full investment into that sector. And then rural water supply indicators. So community water and sanitation agency, as I mentioned, that they are the mandatory agency managing our rural water supply. And they have non-revenue water 25%. And if we want to bring it to 15%, we need to do full investment into that. And we'll look at how much we need for that. The priority actions for urban water supply, doing extending services to peri-urban areas. And now, so for instance, if you are bringing water to the city or any town, any community that the network passes, you must connect them so that you will be serving both the urban and the peri-urban rural kind of a household to expand the gap. And then the PRC, looking at the key performance indicators as well, is something that we also want to look at it. And then the MIS, the water connection kiosks and all that, the tools that can actually enhance performance of urban water supply. And then rural water supply, we are looking at WASH budgeting for them and then improving the sustainability of our systems. So now rural water, community water and sanitation has taken over their pumps in the communities and they are managing it themselves. It's no more the one-sound community management where the borehole gets spoiled and then they abandon it, and that community that is counted as having water becomes a community without water. So they have rehabilitated most of their pumps and they are managing it as an agency. And we have to also increase financing for our rural water supply using some innovative financing mechanisms for them to be able to serve most of our rural communities. So let's move to sanitation. Chapter 5 looks at sanitation, both liquid waste, solid waste, hygiene, and household treatment of water, all under sanitation. And if you look at our coverage, the water was quite exciting, but if you look at sanitation as a country, we are not really doing that much. And for us to be able to achieve 100%, we have to go for full investment. And if we are not able to do that, we do just minimum. It means by 2030, we will be around 65% for urban sanitation, and rural sanitation will be at 58%. So 17%, 2030, which is very bad. So let's see how the funding plays out. And some of the interventions that we are looking at is to strengthen the mobilization efforts, especially sanitation marketing. Our development partners are supporting in that. And our capacity building, especially for private sector, to be able to move into the sanitation space, and also building capacity of institutions, the MMDAs, and then certifying private sectors, our local artisans, to be able to serve quality service. Because you have people having a service today and tomorrow they don't have the service. So we go 2 steps forward and then you go 4 steps back. So we want to prioritize that. And of course, our national ODF strategy as a country, how do we achieve ODF status? And then doing accountability, especially with the MMDs, and continuing the public education and all that. And then they also prioritize the 5 hygiene behaviors, the hand hygiene, the safe hygiene management, the disposal of human excreta, having household toilets, public toilets, and all that. And then domestic waste management from the source to the point of consumption. We are looking at menstrual hygiene, my favorite. And then we also look at other context-specific hygiene behaviors, especially in our schools, when it comes to liquid and solid waste management, and then clean communities and all that. So we have WASH in schools. I won't bore you with that one. We know washing institutions having all the required WASH services in our schools. We have priority actions for them, which is retrofitting some of the innovations, rainwater harvesting and all that. And the key challenge with this one is sustainability of our WASH facilities. So the documents look at how we'll be able to invest into the WASH in schools with Ministry of Education. And then we have WASH in healthcare facilities, just like the schools, but with the healthcare facility, the sustainability, we don't have a big challenge. They have a guidelines as to how to manage their WASH facilities. So some priority actions for that. And then WASH in emergencies. We have to have a system in place in case of any emergency like COVID. So when we had the COVID, the WASH in emergency group was activated and they coordinated. It's made up of Ghana Health Service, Ministry of Education, local governments, and then our partners, development partners, NGOs, to come up with strategies to solve any challenges, that whether it's a disaster, conflict, and all that. We have the WASH emergencies, making sure that our public health is protected. And then we have the cross-cutting issues. And these are the equity and inclusion, gender and climate change, which is also reflected in this document, how the project intervention integrate, make conscious effort to integrate this in your project. And I think it's something that consumers should take note of. And we have some priority actions, you know, the affirmative actions and all that. And then also you have to have standard designs for infrastructure. So like toilets, disability friendly, and all those gender conscious facilities is very important. And then also you have to enhance the consumer representation of voice. So we make sure that any decision-making process or any grouping or any, there are some representative of women or persons with disability also featured. And the climate change, I mean, WASH sector, like I mentioned, we are vulnerable to climate change because of the flooding and drought and all that. So we want to have some social protection and social safety nets. We have a program that we call WASH in Disaster Prone in the northern region, so that we'll be able to have a cohesive society that is vital for climate resilience and the national development. If not, you build all your facilities today and within one rain, all is gone. So we have some actions also for it, prioritizing the need in the event of prolonged drought and water shortage, looking at innovations, technology, and all that to be able to do that. Chapter 7 is the institutional, the chapter 8 is the management, that's the communication, risks, and all. I won't bore you with those ones. But let's move to the costing and the financing. So all these priority interventions that we want to do, if we want to achieve our 100% water coverage, if we want to achieve universal sanitation, hygiene, and all that, you need to have even the investment for CAPEX, and you need investment for OPEX. So the capital expenditure, we need the operational expenditure, and we are looking at basic water supply, safely managed water supply, basic sanitation, fixed point defecation, that we call open defecation, safely managed sanitation, hand washing stations, soap and water. So you need capital investments, and then you need operational investments for us to be able to achieve that. If you look at the breakdown, so for instance, in the year, for us to be able to achieve all these priority interventions that I mentioned, we need about 1.7 billion USD every year up to 2030 to be able to do that. And each component have their capital expenditure that they need and their investment for operation and maintenance. But let's look at this. How are we going to be able to mobilize $1.7 billion in a year for this? We have identified our funding sources already. So if you look at water supply services, government allocation is how we get money for mostly CAPEX and maybe a little OPEX. So if you set your target 1 or your target 2, where is the money coming from? We have our DP loans, that's the World Bank loans that we take, African Development Bank loans that we take. And some of them are currently running. So we have the Gamma Sanitation Water Project, which is a World Bank loan. We have the GWASHDP project, the African Development Bank loan. And then we also have the grants. Some projects in our rural setting, we have grants from development partners and some philanthropists, borehole constructions, some household toilets for the vulnerable groups and all that. We have some DP grants as well. And then of course, the private sector. We don't have so much investment when it comes to liquid waste in the private sector, but when you look at our solid waste management, we have the private sector, the Zoomlion, the Cora, and all those people investing in the solid waste. So it applies to sanitation, and then it also applies to water as to where you get your money. But you see there's a user fee, and then there's MMDA, IGF, both on water and then sanitation. So the contribution from the municipal assembly and you, the user, the household, the contribution that they make is also considered as a funding source for us to raise the target amounts that we are looking for. So this is the scenario for the innovative mechanism to increase WASH investment and resource mobilization from all sources. So the sources that I mentioned and even more, we want to do that, doing investment forums and all that. And then PPP arrangement. So we need an infrastructure. So consumers can decide to build a landfill for us, and then you manage it. Mamiada is laughing. Or even a transfer station for a particular zone, and then you manage it. We have some PPP arrangement as to how much government is contributing, how much you are contributing, and how we share the profits. We have some PPP projects in the system. And then also looking at the corporate separate social responsibility initiatives. We have some organizations who also like Rotary Club, the MTN and those corporate organizations, they also have foundations that supports with that. And we do bankable projects. So like you can do your net present value analysis to know how much the project is going to cost and all that. You get people investing into it. And we are also considering looking at pension funds and bonds, where we'll be able to create favorable conditions for investment in the water sector. When we have a very good regulation and then regulatory oversight of that. But you know how bonds play out, especially with our current experience in the country. So you need to have a very good regulation and then regulatory oversight for you to be able to use pension bonds as an investment option. So the documents also attach a lot of annexes to it. The situation analysis that was done for us to have the challenges and the solutions or the key actions that we have planned, they are all in the document. How you'll be able to use it, the planning and all that is also in some other document as well. So my final slide, if you did not hear anything and somebody asked you, so how was it? Just tell the person that the GWASHDP shed light on the challenges and opportunities in planning and investing in the WASH sector in this emerging global economic crisis. And it provides both financial return as well as significant impacts in terms of public health, poverty reduction, and sustainable development. Thank you very much. Mamiado.
Thank you, Madam Charlotte, for the very captivating presentation. And to be honest, the presentation has been very, very, very enlightening. I appreciate that you've taken your time today to join us. At this juncture, I would hand over to my co-host, Jacqueline, to take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Charlotte, for such an exhaustive presentation on the GWASH development program. We are very grateful to hear firsthand from you what the ministry or the government is doing to support the WASH industry in Ghana. To start, I have one question. As to, you mentioned stakeholder engagement and behavioral change is one of the priorities in improving the work sector in Ghana. I wanted to find out how were all the stakeholders involved in developing this program, and how do you intend to let it reach every stakeholder along the sanitation and water supply value chain?
Okay, thank you very much. So this document was developed over 2 years period. Okay. There were lots of consultative meetings, forums, workshops here and there in the entire country. So the country was divided into 4 zones: the northern sector, eastern, western. So we did all this. And then private sector, because we want to have a lot of investments in the sector, because if you look at the government allocation, even though government allocation is our #1 funding sources, that alone will not be enough. And research has taught us private sector, or we call it even them the SMEs, their contribution is very significant for us to be able to achieve the SDG. So engaging private sector was also a long process of engagement for them to even agree on this costing and all that was done with the private sector. The government have to come in with fund subsidies here and there, tariffs and all that. It's not regulated by private sector, but yet they are beneficiaries of it. So it took a long process of that. And the document was launched on 13th June. Just last month at Kempinski. And we had a World Bank Global Water Director joining us in the country to launch this with our stakeholders. And we even did a pledge. So every sector, including academia, private consultants like yourself, they made a pledge to support the use of this document. And the ministry is also planning an investment forum to invite interested partners to join us to raise this funding, whether you want to build infrastructure in WASH, whether you want to do a research. We have even some academic institutions also supporting the implementation of documents. So the stakeholder is very wide and everybody was consulted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think before I go on to my next question, I'll open the floor to other people to come in. So please, if you have any question, kindly raise your hand and you come in, and you can also text it in the chat box. Okay, so I can see Caleb would want to ask a question. Hello, Caleb.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. So I was wondering if WASH makes data available to individuals, maybe as part of their contributions. If individuals, I know a few people who do water research, and if they had some of these data available, perhaps the insights that they could get from these could be useful to the operations of WASH. So I'm wondering if WASH provides data and what the criteria is, the processes that individuals need to go through, and what kind of data, for instance, surface water, groundwater. Yeah.
Okay, so Caleb, before I allow Madam Charlotte to answer your question, are you able to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, I am I'm a Ghanaian. I am currently studying for my PhD, and this is actually the last year of my PhD. And my research is focused on studying the relationship between groundwater and surface deformation, how groundwater changes the land surface in the Upper East region. And one of the key challenges I faced was data unavailability, but so I had to rely on satellite and modeled hydrological data.
Okay. Thank you very much. You'll be my minister's friend once you are doing any study on groundwater. It's right. You know, we have a lot of data on our surface water, but when it comes to groundwater in the country, we don't even know how much we still have now, and even the quality, like you are saying, mapping the relationship and all that. Currently, we have Hampton Foundation that is supporting, is a UNESCO organization that is supporting the ministry for us to be able to map our groundwater, because currently we don't have data on our groundwater, and you are very right. So it will be quite difficult for you to get available data on groundwater. But for surface water, Water Resource Commission, we have a lot of data on surface water. Even they do monthly reporting. Now, even Minister has reduced it to 2 weeks, monitoring on our turbidity levels and all that. But for groundwater, currently we don't have any systems monitoring our groundwater, and that is something that we are pushing so hard for us to be able to do under the Water Resource Commission. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just a quick follow-up. Sorry. So with regards to the surface water, if one needs data, how does one go about acquiring them?
So we have Water Resource Commission. I currently have some 2 PhD students from Maastricht University. So you can have my contacts from there. I'll put my contacts there. I can connect you to the Madam Ajoa at Water Resource Commission. They will be able to help you with all that data free of charge. You don't have to pay for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There's also another question in the chat box from Beryl, one of our staff here at Construmat. She says, thank you very much, Madam, for such informative presentation. With climate change and green building, what specific interventions or technologies are being implemented under the GWASHDP framework, and how are they determined to be appropriate for different contexts within Ghana? Are there plans for innovative and adaptation based on local conditions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, so if you look at the innovative mechanisms that we have, both under sanitation and water, and even in our schools, sustainability. So we are looking at these green solutions. And for sanitation, now we are looking at safely managed sanitation. So you will not think only providing on-site facility or providing improved toilets for the household and that's it. Where would it be treated? How do you get to the circular economy model where it's reused in the system, feeding back? And luckily for us in Accra, we have Safisana. I don't know if you have heard about Safisana. It's a private organization that is implementing circular economy model in Ashaman. So they have efficacious light treatment plants that they add biomass from the markets, and they have briquettes. They have the gas, and then they also have some farms that they are using the compost. And we are also have partnership with CSIR, Center for Scientific Research. They have also done a lot of pilots on these green innovations, and some of them are taking skill. For instance, this biogas plants we do for our institutions and even prisons. They did one for Winneba prisons, and for us to be able to even access the climate funding. Because climate funding is also one source of funding for government to be able to. As for you to be able to achieve the climate funding, you have to retrofit even some of your technologies that you have for it to be able to meet the demands of the green funding. And we have several projects ongoing in the country that is targeted in a green economy within the workspace, landfill management, our treatment plants, water systems, rainwater harvesting, and all that, recharging aquifers, and all. So we have a lot of smaller projects that is handling that, and even renewable energy concepts and all that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I can see two hands, Emmanuel, Atia, and Beryl, but because of the time, I think these will be the only two follow-up questions we'll have. So Emmanuel.
Yes, good morning and thank you for the opportunity. I want to ask the policies. She has made us to know that a lot of people are involved, including the government. So it's very, very inclusive. But when we look at Ghana, we have a lot of policies that are very, very well presented, especially during the time of delivery. So I want to ask at this point, what are they going to do differently to ensure that we achieve them? I think some of us, we may not understand policies, but who are those who be accountable to what, and then the involvement, who are going to be accountable? What is the way forward that they might have taken that to ensure that everything will put properly in place and we achieve all this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So what makes this document different is that the intervention, the prioritized interventions are costed, right? So if you take rural water, we know how much we need to invest into rural water for every household in a rural setting to have access to safe, adequate water. So there is an institution, community water and sanitation, and they are mandatory government institution for that. Yet you have partners in rural water, you have development partners, you have NGOs, and then we have the National Development Planning Commission, which is also a government mandatory institution for planning. And this document has made clear rules of all these institutions. So for us to be able to strengthen our accountability, right? When it comes to rural water, there are clear rules for PRC, there's a clear rule for community water and sanitation, clear rule for all partners. And then the reporting template is also shared. So when there is a sector review, everybody accounts to. So if we are spending, let's say $5 million on rural water, we know the source of funding, who received the funding, what was it used, and what is the impact. All these things are analyzed, and that is where you'll be able to do the accountability of our spending when it comes to a particular thematic area. So that's the difference between the policies we have in this document. This one is costed, roles are shared, and then there are reporting templates and even planning templates for the sector to use. Thank you. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Jacqueline, somebody's hand is up.
Yes, Farrell, please, can you go ahead and ask the question?
Yeah, Madam, good morning and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for such an informative presentation. Please, I want to do a follow-up question on my colleague. Caleb, you are welcome and thank you for joining us. What my colleague Caleb shared. There are a lot of research being done, especially for students outside the country. But when it comes to data with water, sanitation, hygiene, and all of that, it's difficult to get access to these data. And even when you get someone from the ministry to give you a data, you have to pay for it, something of that sort, because you are outside the country. So I don't know if there can be the framework can, since it's addressing capacity building and research stuff, can there be something to address that? Because we need all this research data for Ghana to improve on these SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know where you paid for the data, because currently I have about 4 PhD students that I'm supporting them to do their work. What you normally do is you write officially to the ministry and they assign you to an officer to work with you depending on the thematic area you are working with. There's one that is not even with gender mainstreaming and WASH, but she was assigned to me. And now the good thing is that we have added the indicators to the Ghana Statistical Service, their census data. They used not to provide any reports on sanitation, but now we have added the golden indicators to Ghana Statistical Service, the census. So the current census, we have enough data when it comes to water and sanitation in the current, the 2021 population and housing census data from Ghana Statistical Service. And this document is also making provision for SIS, Sector Information System. So what it means is that every data on water, sanitation, and hygiene, right from our water resources, that is why Caleb question, the groundwater, realize that we don't have data to put on our system when it comes to groundwater. That's why the ministry is partnering with organizations to support us to map our groundwater and then have even the quality, the quantity, and all that. And then also we have the apps. Now we have some apps in the sector. So we have the ESICAPS, which is capturing data, household data on sanitation. And then we have BASIS. They are all software, application software apps that also capture data on rural sanitation. So if you want data, I think the first point you have to come is the ministry. And depending on the data you want, if it's under, so for Caleb, if Caleb comes to the ministry, he will be referred to an officer in Water Resource Commission because they are in charge of groundwater. If you are doing something sanitation, you might be referred to me or any of my colleagues. If you are doing rural sanitation, there's Tony. So there are shadow officers for this, and depending on what information that you are looking for. But if we are able to populate the SIS, which is the Sector Information System, you will not need to go to anybody for data. You just a click and you'll be able to have access to all this data. And they are now picking the baseline, and we are hoping that by 2024, we should have all our WASH data on our sector information system. Well, now you can't plan without data, and especially for students, I know how difficult it is when you are not getting data for your thesis. So we hope to be able to improve on that one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam. I hope your question has been answered. So we have another question from Mr. David Gledending from Botswana. And the question is, Madam, as an appropriate percentage of your existing SIWA network, how much is vacuum as opposed to gravitation collection? Going forward, do you see a move to increasing the implementation of vacuum SIWA network? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was a very hot discussion during the preparation of this document, when some partners were even pushing that we go 100% SIWA. But, you know, the population is fast growing, our cities are fast growing, and the planning is behind. So we are growing faster than development. And for you to be able to do any more SIWA network, so for instance, Tema is already planned, Tema is already SIWA'd by our first president, that is Kwame Nkrumah. So we have about 70% of Tema being SIWA'd. So if you want to add on, it's easier to do that because they have already planned a city like that. But if you move to certain parts of our cities,
Good morning.
it will be very difficult for you to be able to do SIWA networks there. So and even currently in the country, we have about 80% on-site facilities. So it will be a lot of investment for us to be able to do SIWA network. But however, the planned cities that we have, like Tema, Kumasi, Tamale, Takoradi, we are trying to expand the network to have some more coverage. But we are also having systems to manage the on-site facilities that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gledenden. I hope this has answered your question. I think we don't have much time, so maybe we can wrap up on today's session. Thank you so much, Madam. And I'll hand over to Mami Adjoa to give the closing remark.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. Once again, Madam Charlotte, since we do not have any more questions, I'd like to say on behalf of everyone, thank you, and to extend our heartfelt appreciation for sharing your extensive knowledge with us today. It truly has been engaging and it's been a very informative session. I wanted to find out if Mr. Melome had any final thoughts to share before we wrap up this session.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, and for everyone for joining today's session. We look forward to having a follow-up discussion on some of the issues you've raised. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Madam Charlotte, once again, thank you. This has been very informative, very engaging, and we really appreciate that you took the time to join us this morning. So everyone else who also made time to join us today, the journey we've embarked on through Ghana's GWASHDP has shown us the power of access to safe water, improved sanitation, enhanced hygiene practices, and the work ahead of us, because it seems to be quite a lot.
Yeah.
I hope that we all carry the lessons we've learned today and the passion that this presentation has ignited into our actions moving forward. Together, I believe we can create a future where everyone has equal access to these essential services. Thank you all for your participation and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.